Good morning to all my friends and family, and welcome to this episode of Jim's 5am Club. It's Thursday morning, the 19th of January 2023, and it's a little bit overcast at the moment. Looks like it's going to be a wet old Sydney summer day. It's mild, not too windy, and yet another start to our lifetimes. What I'd like to do today is to take us all through a book summary, a book that was written and published in 2018 by a famous author, a well-known author named Sinek, and the book is entitled The Infinite Game, and it's a book which looks into the mindset of people, the mindset of businesses, and gives us a few lessons to mull over, to contemplate, and some things to consider in terms of incorporating them into our skill set and hopefully using them to launch and leverage a better lifestyle, a better work environment, and to give us a greater purpose for the things that we do. I'm just waiting for a cruise ship to come in today. My friends Elizabeth and family, Elizabeth, Peter and Leonese, are coming back from a cruise, and they'll be docking up here over the next hour or so. I could be a little bit early, but we'll see whether or not we can see this beautiful cruise ship come in and maybe get a wave from Elizabeth and family whilst we're doing this vlog. So to kick off this book, the author puts forward a concept where he says that our lives are finite, but our life is infinite. We are the finite players in the infinite game of life. We come and go. We're born and we die. And life, amazingly, still continues on without us or with us. So we're a link in this enormous chain that has a huge past and will have, hopefully, a long, huge future. But within that lifetime, within that game, there are two types of players, according to this author. And those players, those participants, have two very, very different types of mindset. There is one who has a finite mindset, and there are those who have an infinite mindset. And both mindsets have advantages and disadvantages, and this book looks at the two types of mindsets and how they can help one, or how they can hinder one within their life, within their span of participation. So the author uses two examples of corporations and looks at the mindsets that these organisations seem to employ. The two organisations that he selected to talk about are both Apple and Microsoft, two organisations that coexist in the information technology space, two organisations that he has worked with, that he has presented to. And he said that he was just amazed at how different these two organisations are, even though they are in the same industry, they have similar customers. He said that they've got two very, very different mindsets, which we will examine in a bit of detail. He said that when he went to Microsoft, the majority of the presenters talked about how they were going to beat their opponent, how they were going to beat Apple, how they were going to be better than Apple. Whereas when he went to the Apple corporation and did his presentations, the majority of the speakers there focused their presentations on how Apple helps teachers teach and how Apple helps students learn, without the focus, without the preoccupation of what other people were doing. It was purely focused on what Apple is and what Apple is doing, and didn't have that competitor streak that Microsoft had. So these two different organisations, according to the author, have different mindsets. Microsoft, according to the author, had a finite mindset, a mindset like a soccer game, whereas Apple, on the other hand, had an infinite mindset, more aligned to the mindset of a person in a relationship, one that just wanted to span and continue into the future. What the author adds to his presentation here in the book is that these different mindsets have different outcomes. And he says that infinite companies tend to live longer, are kinder, and add more value to the world. So I guess his call to action is that whilst we can all choose how we think, how we behave, how we hold ourselves, he said that you're probably better off having an infinite mindset, because that mindset will get you further and generate more goodwill within your lifetime than having the other mindset. He said, or he goes on to say, that it's important to understand that there are various steps that one can incorporate into their mindset. And he talks about a 5-step cycle, which is quite interesting and worthy of focusing some of our efforts on. And the first point that he makes, which is really, really important and critical, something that we all need to, I guess, incorporate into our mindsets if we're going to get a long-term benefit and give us the energy to fight on. He says that the first thing we need to do is we need to advance a just cause. The organisations that live longer, the people who thrive for longer, are the ones who advance a just cause. And I guess one of the things that we've seen over time, and I can see a ship coming in, it's just at the corner there of the Opera House. It's probably about 10 minutes away, so I will get an opportunity to incorporate this docking of this ship in this video, and hopefully be able to get a wave from Elizabeth, Peter and Leonese. But advancing a just cause. But what I've noticed over the past maybe 5 years is a lot of organisations have gone woke. They've gone woke by latching onto these just causes, not because they want to be good corporate citizens, but because they want to tick a box and to gain a foothold and make more money and seem more relevant. So that answers the question that I had in terms of, why does Qantas, for example, push the same-sex marriage barrow? Or why do a lot of organisations these days get so obsessed with Indigenous affairs or pushing the Indigenous barrow? And now I understand from this book that Sinek has put forward that the reason why a lot of these organisations latch on to various causes, the environmental cause, there's been quite a few of them. The all against coal, the clean energy causes, all of those things are opportunities for businesses to align themselves with a cause that will positively resonate with customers and further their business interests, rather than, of course, doing something which is, good for that cause. I'll just tick the box and be a voice for that cause. So the author here says that if you want to prosper as an organisation or as a person, what you're best doing is advancing a just cause. The second point in this 5-step cycle is to build trusting teams. The third point is to learn from your worthy rivals, with the emphasis on worthy, because not all rivals are worthy. Just like not all opinions are worthy. There are people, there are influencers who have featherweight opinions, and there are those who have heavyweight opinions. But the author here is saying that you can learn from your rivals, you can embrace them, you can work with them, which I think is probably one of the most powerful points, one of the most profound points to come from this book, and we'll expand on it a little bit later. He also mentions the importance of practicing existential flexibility, because at the end of the day, we can have all the just causes in the world, we can have the best teams, we can build trust, we can learn from others, but if we're not flexible in our approach, then we're going to have challenges and we're going to face issues. So the author, once again, tells us the importance that if you want longevity, if you want to survive and thrive, then you need to be able to leverage and use the ups and downs, knowing that there are going to be many ups and many downs, but you need to be flexible in your approach so that you're not knocked out and made extinct like the dinosaurs were millions of years ago. So you need to have some sort of flexibility in your mindset, in your approach, and to retreat every now and then, rather than to continue fighting every battle just to make sure that you win every time. So we need to practice existential flexibility. And the last point from Simon Sinek in terms of this 5-step cycle is that we need to have the courage to lead. So just moving on, the author says that the world is full of finite and infinite games, but business is infinite and must be played with an according mindset. In terms of a metaphor or an example as to what a finite game looks like, he uses the example of soccer, and he says that soccer, or most competitive sports, are examples of finite games where you've got a field, a clearly marked field, you've got rules that are clear, you've got a referee, you've got a set time, a time that the game starts, a time that the game has breaks, and a time that the game ends. And there are clear rules in terms of who the winners and who the losers are. And the important thing to understand is that finite games require finite mindsets, and a finite mindset inspires short-term thinking, has short-term goals, ticks the boxes. But at the end of the day, the author says that we are surrounded by infinite games, and examples of infinite games are businesses, corporations, which don't have a fixed lifetime. They can go on forever. All they are just legal structures that enable business to continue infinitely. Relationships, education, all of those things, according to the author, are infinite games. There is no start time, there's no finish time. The rules are flexible and variable. They change all the time. And the goal is to stay in the game. So if you're in a business, if you're in a relationship, if you're learning, the key lesson from this book, from this author, is that you need to keep on keeping, I guess, and you need to stay in the game for as long as possible, because staying in the game is the goal in itself. And there is a danger. There's a warning here from this author. There is a danger of playing infinite games with a finite mindset, and many corporations are caught up in this, where you've got businesses playing an infinite game with a finite mindset, which just basically, as the author says, it just doesn't work. We need to have long-term thinking. We need to have goals that are long-term. We just can't go from quarter to quarter. Of course, you need to make money. You need to hit those short-term goals, but it mustn't be at the expense, from what this author is saying, of your long-term goals. What he is saying is you need to be like a country like Singapore. Now, Singapore have got a 100-year vision of where they want to be. They have a plan. They all work to a bigger outcome than just what's going to happen next year or the year after. China, for example, have the long game. They've been playing the long game for a long time. They have a big population. They have big things to do and great things to achieve. And it's not going to be done through a short-term mindset. It needs to be done through a very, very long-term mindset. The next point that the author makes, as we see this ship gently and gracefully coming into dock here at the International Passenger Terminal, is that infinite thinking needs a just cause, as we said before, and we need to keep on advancing our purpose. Surprisingly, the author says that the life cycle or the lifetime of businesses, of corporations, has dramatically shrunk over the past 20 or 30 years, from an average of 61 years to a lifespan of just 18. In my career, I've been very fortunate to have worked for a few companies that have lived or have survived over 100 years. I worked for NCR, which celebrated its 100th year back in the 80s. I worked for IBM, which celebrated its 100th year. And I also worked for another organisation named Allen's, a legal firm, which this year or last year celebrated its 200th anniversary of being in business. But the difference is, or appears to be, is that businesses no longer have just causes. They no longer have a purpose. They no longer have a vision of the future. And they pay the price. The author here says that you need to have a vision of the future state that does not yet exist. This is one of the beauties of the IT industry, and I guess the legal industry as well, is that they have or had just causes which were compelling, which were powerful, which attracted the best minds, the best people, the best teams, and gave tremendous energy to those people to keep on going and to become the best that they could possibly be. The author here says another point, which I guess is something that resonates with me as well, is that you must have a just cause, but that just cause must be for something, must be a positive just cause and not be against something. A lot of the just causes that people are promoting these days hate just causes. They're against coal industry. They're causing grief. They're doing things to disrupt people's lives. All of those so-called just causes, those woke just causes, according to this author, are against something, and they don't have I guess the energy, they don't have that magic glue that will continue on working and attracting people. And I guess that's why you have two sets of camps these days, the ones who are for and the ones who are against. And as the author says, it's important to understand that organisations need to be very clever, I guess, and selective in how they structure and frame their just causes. The just cause also, in order to be compelling, needs to be inclusive. Just like on the Harbour Bridge, you'll see today they've got the Australian flag and the Aboriginal flag. From my perspective, the Australian flag is an inclusive flag. The Aboriginal flag is not inclusive. It's for a minority. It's for a specific minority. it excludes me, it excludes my family. Whereas the Australian flag, as I feel, is an inclusive flag, just like the LGTB plus minus multiply, whatever you want to call it, flag is exclusive. It's got the 6 colours, but it excludes heterosexual people. And hence why that so-called just cause can never be successful, because it is exclusive and not inclusive. The other thing that the author says is that the just cause needs to be, must be service oriented. It must call people to service. And somebody needs to be able to benefit from it. And you must be resilient, and it must be idealistic. So for these just causes to be successful, there are a couple of things, according to this author, that need to happen in order for them to function effectively and to survive the test of time. So as we can see, the Pacific Adventure is slowly coming in to dock, and the last point that I want to talk about from this author is the need for worthy rivals. As worthy rivals, what we've learnt over the years, over the thousands of years, even the ancient Greeks understood this clearly, that worthy rivalship, worthy rivalry was important because it lifts our overall standards. It's the tide that lifts the ship, because we all learn and we all are able to improve by having a worthy rival, somebody who can help us achieve our best. Now, it's not about just winning, it's just about lifting our service, lifting our standard, and becoming the best that we can possibly be. And the big lesson that this author got was when he met one of his so-called rivals, and his profound message there was that the way you see someone, your rival, has nothing to do with them, but everything to do with you, the way you see them, not the way they are. So the key message from this author is that we need to learn from others. We need to be able to complement and supplement their strengths, and to focus more about growing the pie, because what the author here is saying, and this is a powerful point, is that the pie is not limited in size. We shouldn't be focused on just grabbing a bigger piece of the pie. We're better off just trying to increase the size of the pie rather than trying to eat the pieces of the pie which are on somebody else's plate. An interesting thought. It's basically looking and focusing on abundance rather than focusing on scarcity. Focus on growing the pie altogether rather than trying to eat your neighbour's pieces is a much worthy and a much valid way of seeing things. So what the author here is encouraging us to do, what the author is saying, is that we need to embrace our competitors and see them more as co-players. Adopt the mindset of abundance rather than a mindset of scarcity, and focus on our just cause, and to be more like Apple and less like Microsoft. Because at the end of the day, our Christian mission is very simple. It's to serve God with all our heart, mind and soul, and to serve and love our neighbour as we love ourselves. It's not about competing with everybody else. It's about working with everybody else to make the world a better place, to increase the size of the pie, to make sure that everybody gets a chance to eat, rather than one person or a few people eating a lot and a lot of people just having some crumbs to fight over. And the bottom line is that we all need to be partners in God's creation, to work with Him, to be stewards, to be servants, to be maids, to be working in conjunction with each other so that we can all have more of a bigger pie. There is no limit in terms of how big the pie can be. So I guess that's about it. So thank you very much for joining me on this episode of Jim's 5am Club. We've got the Pacific Adventure coming ever so closer to this international passenger terminal, until it gets to the point where it will just completely block out the sky and be so overwhelming. It's such a big ship, such a big, beautiful ship. And I hope that Elizabeth, Peter and Leonese have had a great time on this P&O cruise. And I could just imagine Peter being up there over the past few days and just enjoying that water slide and bringing out the child in him. Anyway, take care everybody. I look forward to coming to you again from a different place with a different message of empowerment, where we can live, learn and pass it on. And hopefully one day I too can take my wife, my good wife Paula, and go on a short-term cruise and get to see a few of these Pacific islands. Yasas, take care and bye for now.